Earlier today, I was watching this clip from The View. The only reason I watch or ever watch View is when they have interesting guests on show, and because most of the hosts at The View are political hacks, in my opinion, and just reiterate the mainstream media talking points. It's fun to kind of see how or what kind of questions they pose to the guest, and especially when I kind of like the guest, right? So in this case, they brought in AOC, and she's been doing a lot of interesting work for the past couple of years, and she's up for a re-election. So I guess she uh, is going to different media shows so that she can put her record up to the people, and while she goes into the primaries for her house seat, and re-election after that. uh, but since she's one of the strong supporter of Bernie Sanders, obviously they're gonna hit her with a lot of idiotic questions, and one of those questions is about Bernie Bros. If you are not familiar with the Bernie Bro term, you are actually doing well in your life, because this is the whole media narrative which they created back in 2016 when Bernie Sanders supporters on Twitter and other social media was pushing back these stupid arguments from Hillary Clinton. And when I say stupid argument, I really mean it in the sense because most of the Hillary Clinton's position were in the favor of establishment, and her media army were, calling out Bernie as sexist, calling out Bernie as uh, socialist, and all labeling Bernie and attacking Bernie, and on top of all the rigging Hillary Clinton and DNC did back in 2016. But that all being aside, when people were actually pushing back using trolls and humor and sometimes even vicious comments, these political hacks, they were getting triggered, and they created this narrative of Bernie Bros who will be vicious on social media and attack every person who doesn't agree with them. To be honest, welcome to social media. If you need to be triggered and act like a snowflake that a specific group of people are uh, uh, being vicious and acting as an army, and pushing back against whatever they feel like is injustice or incorrect, that's social media in a nutshell. I don't agree with all the pushback, or I don't agree with all the vicious comments anyone says against anyone, right? Like right now, there's this woke army who just go on a rampage on social media and try to cancel everyone and anyone who doesn't agree with them. So I totally get it that having some sort of tribe which just create vicious comments and attack any specific person uh, can create uh, uh, can act as a bullies uh, towards that person. So I totally get that. But that being said, it's a different point. It's a different statement altogether when you're talking in terms of politics. Because if I am, since I'm gonna post this video online, and if there are like horde of people who will be, um, you know, uh, criticizing me, so to speak. First of all, I get that I'm not in powerful position here, so why I would feel triggered and agitated because of that. And secondly, I also get it, like because of this horde of this woke army, or name it anything else, like Bernie Bros. It if it can impact my life at a personal level, so that if I get fired because of that or some other consequences, then there is a real life effect. So I get that. That's one point of view. But the other point of view is like, if you're in political spectrum, and if you have a power where people are actually listening to you, where people agree with your opinion. Let's just say if I have 500,000 or a million supporters or fans, and if then there is this horde of army who is criticizing my point of view, then I don't, at that point I am in a position of power. So if I feel triggered and act like a snowflake at that point, it's a whole different conversation. And also it seems like I'm not powerful enough to be in a position to uh, be in a position where a million people should even follow me in the first place. So the point I'm making is like it's a different argument when a horde of people are targeting an individual who doesn't hold any power, like me at this moment, versus when a horde of people are targeting, an individual or a company or whatever who hold power, who has a lot of followers, then it's a different argument. So we have to look at things in context. So when there are vicious comments from Bernie's supporters towards individuals who don't have any power at all, I get that why it would be triggering and why it could sounds like a vicious attack. But when they do that against someone who hold power, then it's a different conversation, and it's like, they are pushing back to the narrative and debunking what they are saying in the first place. So that being said, let's take a listen to what this smart people have to say about the Bernie Bros.
Yes, Congresswoman, thank you for coming on. I'm glad that you decided to come and talk to us. I feel like you're the boogie woman of the right, and I'm the boogie woman of the left, so it's interesting to be talking to you.
Okay, Megan McCain, you are a boogie woman for the left. Okay, all right. Um, that's that's such a childish statement to make. You're comparing yourself to AOC. First of all, you haven't done shit in your life. You have done more than I did, so I see that. But like comparing yourself to AOC, who has actually ran against establishment candidate, built a movement, and after she gained that power, she used it to fight for the people. And you, on the other end, your qualification is, um, I mean, to be honest, it's just a nepotism. You got into this position because of your family and your status. And once you are in that position, what do you do with your power? Instead of bringing up valid points, you act dramatic in all of your, interviews, so to speak. So it's disingenuous to compare yourself with AOC, but I guess that's how you feed your ego. So let's move on.
To you because what you're proposing and what Bernie Sanders is proposing, you said that Fox was like ushering in the apocalypse with both of you, but to conservatives like me who think that big government is very, very dangerous, it is like the apocalypse. And it's not just that Bernie...
Except when big government get into your personal space, when they decide what choices you can make on your body, what drugs in some sense you can take within your body, who you can marry, that's all big government intruding into your life, and you're okay with that. So yeah, a bit of hypocritic statement there.
Bernie is asking a lot of voters to buy into what I consider radical ideas like free public college, the Green New Deal, Medicare for all. He's advocating for a complete paradigm shift of the American system as we know it. And it's a huge ask for people like me, and it's a huge ask for a lot of people, this seismic shift from capitalism to socialism. And actually, a Gallup poll showed that a majority of Americans would not vote for a socialist, around 45% wouldn't consider it. So what do you say to that?
First of all, that's some of those messages is what Trump ran back in 2016. So it's not a new wave. It's the people that's what people chose back in 2016 as well, where they want a better healthcare system, where they want a better education, where they want a better infrastructure. So most of these arguments which you're making are illogical. It's already kind of sort of proven, because that's why Trump won, that people do want these programs. So yeah, it's not an apocalyptic situation. It's what people want to have a better life and have better life for entire community.
It's not just that it's a political, I think there's a lot of Republicans who would be more comfortable with a Biden or with a more moderate. What do you say to someone like that?
Well, one is, when you pull these abstract ideas, it's one thing, but the majority of Americans would vote for Bernie Sanders. And that's because of his record, because of his commitment and his policies. But also, I think, I think there's one story that's not really being told here is what's actually happening on the ground in America. Do you know what percent of American workers make less than $40,000 a year? Mm-hmm. Almost 60%. 60% of Americans
You can't live on that in New York.
You can't live on
No
that
way.
in New York, and you can barely live on that anywhere. You can't live on that if you have kids.
No.
And I think that reality, personally, does require a paradigm shift.
And just to add on to that, if people doesn't understand how money works, how power works, how a lot of things in the universe works, first of all, they should educate themselves to begin with. But here's a brief overview. When you have a lot of money, you can make more money easily. When you have good network, you can build onto that network and get more opportunities easily. When you are trapped with poverty, it becomes a vicious cycle, because when you don't even have enough money to survive, how would you even invest into say some project, or how would you invest in yourself? How would you earn more money when you don't have enough money to begin with? That's what the whole underlying issue is. And it's not just with money, it's with power as well. That's why we see that people who are in powerful position, they automatically get more power, because they leverage that position to gain more power. Likewise, it's easier to get or make money when you have $1 million to $10 million. You can invest and get returns fairly easily when you have $1 million and get to 10 millions, versus when you have even $100,000 to $1 million. So that's how things work. It become exponentially better when you have something, and that's how universe work as well. So look at all the famous actors. They when they have one good project, they get more good projects, and sometimes some of the actors which are subpar and get into industry because of their family name or nepotism or whatever you call it, and once they are into the film industry, they get more movies, they get more followers and whatnot. So that's how the things work in universe. So when most of the people are just surviving, it says that they are trapped in this poverty cycle, whereas the fewer people who has a lot of money, they gonna make a lot of money without putting in the same amount of work or effort. For an example, Warren Buffett, he make millions of dollars just on dividends. So imagine that he already has so much money that he can just invest into right companies and stocks, and he makes millions of dollars just by leaving that money. His main capital is not even touched, and he still gain money out of it. So that's how things work.
This isn't working for us. And a $2.1 trillion tax cut, which has been deemed capitalism at its finest, doesn't work for us.
Right.
You're losing your husband because he couldn't afford insulin because Big Pharma cares about profits more than people, as capitalism at its finest, does not work for us. And I
Bernie
think
has a hard time explaining how he's going to pay for it, though.
so. Let's talk about how we'll pay for it, because I think
I mean, I watched this clip, so I know what she's gonna say, and this is such an amazing answer.
we need to talk about what policies. A tuition-free public college.
2.2 trillion over 10 years.
So it's funny because progressive policies are always talked about in 10-year price tags. Conservative policies are always talked about in 1-year price tags. And so our military budget increase went up by $70 to $80 billion 1 year alone, about $100 billion. Since Trump started, pretty much, or it's been about $100 billion increase since Trump started. We don't ask how he pays for that. When we talk about big government, we don't talk about big government interjecting themselves into the bodies of women and gender nonconforming people for anti-choice policy. So I'm happy to talk about the reduction of government's role in places that I think are harmful, but
I mean, she just burned Meghan McCain so bad, but AOC is such a good orator, and that's one of the reasons why she has been so effective, for the past 2 years in the Congress. And hopefully she does get reelected and continue working on this progressive policies which she stands for.
Tell them how this is getting paid for, because
Sure.
yeah, that's what you want. Right.
So tuition.
So Whoopi just acting as I don't know, ignorant, but I mean, she already laid it out. She said it indirectly that why don't you ask when the government is wasting money on a lot of different military projects and other BS. But let's listen how AOC tackled that specific question for that specific policy.
Free public colleges, that can be paid by a simple Wall Street transaction tax. Medicare for all, what you do is that you take your premium and some of your health care costs right now that you give to a Blue Cross Blue Shield and Aetna, whomever, and you lower that number. The average American family pays about $10,000 in health care costs. You lower that number and it transitions over to a payroll tax, and the average American gets to save tons more money. There was a Yale study that just came out that said we could transition to Medicare for all and give 2 years severance to every person whose job may be risked in the transition, and still save money in our current health care system.
People want to keep their back.
So she already answered the question that pointing out to the studies and pointing out that there are already some of the researches done by people who outlined what would be the trajectory if we don't switch to Medicare for all. It's gonna cost more than what would happen if we switch to Medicare for all. So basically the data is out there, but people are just being ignorant, or they are just passed on with this media talking points. So they have to ask the same BS question every single time. How are you gonna pay for it?
Backup insurance plans. That was Elizabeth Warren's issue. Where does Bernie stand on that?
On their Medicare supplemental?
Yeah, the supplemental.
So Medicare for all,
Private also.
Private.
People may
Private
keep their
also, not just
private.
Medicare for all.
So private.
I mean, supplemental.
So I think that if we're talking about our normal healthcare plans, I think people like their doctors. I don't know if people love Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I think that when we expand our healthcare system, when we lower the price of prescription drugs, when we guarantee healthcare as a right in the United States of America, just as every other developed country in the world does, we will be in a better place.
Congresswoman,
And this is not, by any means just a statement. This has been, I mean, the Medicare for all equivalent policies have been in place for in a lot of other countries like Canada and most of the European nations, and they can actually see that not only the system helps people in having a quality care, health care, but also lower down the cost. So this is such an ingenuous statement to begin with, that how what if the people want to have additional insurance on top of Medicare for all. I think in some sense I think Bernie should adopt, I won't say adopt per se, but should use Tulsi Gabbard's talking point, because Tulsi Gabbard kind of outlined that, yeah, you all, everyone will be automatically signed up for Medicare for all. But if you want to opt out, it's up to you, but you're still paying it with your taxes. I think Bernie should do that and then see how many of these people would actually want to have a choice of their private insurance. But it's kind of mind-boggling how most of these people don't understand that when we pay for the health insurance from our paycheck. I do pay from my paycheck, and so does everyone else, or most of the people, not counting the service industry and other industries where the employer doesn't offer the health insurance plans. But all the other people, we pay it out of our paycheck. So we are paying for the health insurance. What Bernie Sanders is proposing is that instead of coming out of from our paycheck, we'll pay it out of tax. The money would be, similar money would be gone, but overall, everyone will get a healthcare system. And what Bernie is proposing is the tax which will be, taxed for the healthcare would be much lesser than what I'm paying with my insurance. So in other sense, whatever money I'm paying from my paycheck, maybe the employers will raise the salary of it to compensate for that money, and we will pay that, we'll pay the tax. So and still have money in our hand, or more money in our hand. So it's illogical and disingenuous when people kind of make this argument that the tax is going to go up, and what if they want to keep their own private health care.
I don't think we're going to find a middle ground on this, so do you mind if we move on to the next subject, which we might be able to find a little more middle ground on? So I want to talk about the Bernie bros. The one thing that connects women on the left and women on the right, I have found at least a lot of guest hosts, a lot of guests that have come on over the 3 years I've been here, is the abuse that we have all been subjected to by Bernie bros. It is by far, of anything I've ever done in my entire life, the most violent, the most misogynistic, the most sexist, the most harmful. My mother has cried over a doc.
Are you fucking kidding me? Have you forgot all the things which right-wing, the people on the right-wing side does? That this is the reason I was saying, like, this is one of the reasons why I don't even want to watch The View in the first place, because Meghan McCain and all the other people up there kind of create this drama around that everything is terrible for them, everything is terrible around them. No, it's not. And if you are such a snowflake that you have to cry because people are just trolling and people are being idiot and ingenious or stupid or whatever, then it's on you, because you can't control everyone else. And that's why you have First Amendment. What do you want? Do you want people to kind of like just suppress, or do you want government to suppress all these social media so that people can't speak their minds? Is that what you're opting in for or favoring for?
Doctored photos Bernie brothers have sent me, and I'm just one story. He has a real problem, and I don't think that he's doing enough to tamper it down. If it were anyone, I'd say this has no representative of me. It's disgusting. It's vitriolic, and every time I see him talk about it, he's like, doesn't represent me, move on. You're an extremely powerful woman.
What else do you want him to do? What would you do? Like, your whatever followers, if they attack someone else, what can you do? You can just say and appeal to them. Yeah, and that's a statement even Trump does. Trump makes, right? He says out loud crazy things, but his supporters does crazy things, and Trump brush it off from his uh, uh, whatever his supporters does, and you are okay with that, even though Trump supporters actually are, hurt people. They had these rallies where they killed people. Whereas on the other end, when you're comparing Bernie Bros are just the trolls on internet, which Bernie Bros itself, the label itself is, given by media, because, whoever kind of debunks their talking points, it seems like it's like a Bernie bro, like a horde of people. So you're not even looking at what is actually happening on your spectrum, the right side of the spectrum, where the president is literally creating a chaos, and in some sense people are acting as violent in the reality, and you're comparing it with like a troll of people, and you're want Bernie to kind of monitor those people, or do you want Bernie to come out and say that he gonna create policy to ban people on social media? That's obviously against First Amendment. So the reason First Amendment is in place is that because everyone can speak their mind, and if you don't like it, well, close your ears. If you can't withstand Twitter, then just sign the fuck out.
How do you feel that he's attached to this deeply misogynistic, and I would go so far as to say violent, sector of people?
Yeah.
Violent. What proof do you have calling violent? Because it hurt you, like from inside, it hurt your heart? That's such a stupid statement. This is, she's such a drama queen.
Yeah, and I think internet culture can often be very toxic, and whether we are cognizant of it or not, it nearly always concentrates on women, people of color, queer people.
Definitely.
And we experience the brunt of it. And I think, I think that to a certain extent, we have to always reject hate, reject vitriol, and denounce that kind of behavior. Also, we also know the amount of anonymous activity that happens on the internet, and that simply is difficult. It is difficult to control when you have like a Twitter handle with a bunch of numbers on it with 2 followers that are lobbying vitriol at you. We don't know where that comes from, but I know that it doesn't.
Do you think he's done enough to try and stop it?
I think he works very hard. I think we send out messaging emails, and you know what? I've been subject to a lot of this stuff from all sorts of pockets from the internet. ICE and CBP officers targeted me on Facebook for attacks when I went to visit the border. They photoshopped, people who are supposed to be protecting immigrants and children, photoshopped.
He's got to do more.
Horrendous.
He's got to.
Oh, is it Whoopi? Oh, when AOC is making sense, you want to cut her off and say that Bernie has to do more? Are you? I don't even have words to kind of describe all this shit shell.
He's got to stand up and say it every day if he needs to.
Yeah.
Stop this. We're not accepting it. It's not good for us.
Which he does. I feel like AOC done really good job just debunking a lot of their BS points, and specifically when it comes to important issues such as health insurance for all, Medicare for all, how they're gonna pay for it, and also about the Bernie Bros. So hopefully the View actually have a better view now, but I doubt that would be the case.